The concept that our reality could be an advanced simulation has fascinated philosophers, scientists, and other intellectuals. The simulation hypothesis is a concept that became more popular after Nick Bostrom published his paper, Are You Living in a Computer Simulation? In 2003. Bostrom proposed that the likelihood of us living in base reality is extremely low, a statement that has been supported by people such as Elon Musk. The hypothesis suggests that our perception of reality could be nothing more than a digital construct created by advanced intelligence. This idea is similar to ancient spiritual teachings that claim the world is an illusion. The idea of Maya, or the cosmic illusion, in Eastern traditions like Hinduism and Buddhism, is very similar to the simulation hypothesis. In Hinduism, Maya refers to the way people perceive the material world as real, which hides the ultimate reality of Brahman, the infinite and unchanging essence. Buddhism teaches that the phenomenal world does not have inherent existence, similar to the artificial construct of a simulated environment. This is due to its emphasis on shunyata, or emptiness. Both traditions promote practices that are intended to break through this illusion, implying that freedom can be found by understanding that what seems to be real is actually not real. The concept of reality as an illusion is also deeply rooted in Western philosophy. In Plato's allegory of the cave, prisoners are depicted as being unable to see the real world outside of the cave. Instead, they are only able to see shadows that are cast on the wall. In his Meditations on First Philosophy, René Descartes suggested a thought experiment in which a wicked demon creates a false external world. The demon has been replaced by advanced programmers today, but the fundamental question still stands. What is real? Descartes came to the conclusion that even though everything in the outside world could be questioned, the very act of questioning proved that the self existed. This idea is captured in his well-known statement, "I think, therefore I am." The simulation hypothesis adds an interesting twist to the conclusion that Descartes reached. If our brains and thoughts are part of the simulation, does that mean that consciousness is just a byproduct of computational processes, or is it a fundamental part of reality that goes beyond the simulation itself? Materialist perspectives often consider consciousness to be emergent, meaning that it arises from neural activity. However, the simulation hypothesis raises more profound questions. If our neural processes are simulated, consciousness may be a second-order emergent property that is not connected to physical matter, but rather to the underlying code. This raises an even more significant question. Who or what was responsible for creating that code? According to the beliefs of Hinduism and Buddhism, the foundation of reality must be eternal, unchanging, and always present. They argue that anything that comes and goes cannot be real. This criterion calls into question whether even our sense of existence, the feeling of I am, can be considered real. Certain schools of Hindu Advaita Vedanta recommend meditating on the feeling of I am in order to uncover its essential characteristics. However, others, including the teachings of Nisargadatta Maharaj, challenge the notion that being is the ultimate truth. Maharaj claimed that the body-mind is responsible for the emergence of the sense of existence, and that it disappears along with the body-mind, making it as fleeting as any other phenomenon. Ramana Maharshi, another prominent teacher of Advaita Vedanta, stressed the importance of self-inquiry as a means of discovering one's true self. He taught that when you ask yourself the question, "Who am I?" you come to the realization that your true self is not your body, mind, or ego, but something that goes beyond all of those things. According to Ramana, the ultimate reality is found in a state that is beyond even the sense of I am. This state is prior to existence and non-existence. This teaching is consistent with the Buddhist concept of emptiness, which holds that the self and the world are perceived as dependent on conditions and ultimately devoid of inherent substance. If the simulation hypothesis is true, spiritual teachings like these might provide a way to rise above it. Regardless of whether or not our reality is a computer simulation, the process of liberation involves removing layers of illusion, including the illusion of self. It is important to first understand that every experience, regardless of how real it appears, is dependent on the existence of someone who is perceiving it. The world does not exist without the illusion of a self to experience it. This understanding is essential to the process of self-inquiry. Ramana Maharshi explained that it is the act of clinging to the primary illusion, which is the feeling of I am, until the source of that feeling is revealed. This source, which is frequently referred to as nothingness, is not a void in the nihilistic sense. Instead, it is an infinite openness from which all phenomena arise and into which they dissolve. Nisargadatta Maharaj shared a similar thought when he suggested that one should meditate on the I am until it is perceived as an illusion. He taught that being is not base reality because it is contingent and transient, arising only with the body-mind. Paradoxically, nothingness meets the requirements for base reality. It neither comes nor goes, and is the silent backdrop against which all apparent phenomena, whether physical or simulated, play out. This realization makes the question of whether we live in a simulation unimportant. No matter how things look, the fundamental truth is that everything comes from and returns to nothingness. The simulation hypothesis provides a contemporary metaphor for these age-old truths. It implies that our reality is contingent and constructed, similar to a computer program. However, if someone looks closely, it becomes clear that the simulation is simply another layer of deception. The feeling of being an observer within the simulation, which is the sense of existence, is ultimately regarded as a part of the construct. Transcendence is achieved when one recognizes the immense openness of non-being, which comes before and supports all appearances. As a result, spiritual awakening is the process of separating oneself from all layers of illusion, including the most subtle layer, which is the illusion of self-existence. By resting in the sense of I am and investigating its nature, one can intuit its source. This source is nothingness, not a void, but rather an infinite potential that has no form. It is the fundamental reality that goes beyond all simulations, constructs, and experiences. This understanding leads to freedom. Regardless of whether the universe is a highly advanced computer simulation or not, the understanding that nothingness is the fundamental reality makes all appearances secondary. Although the simulation hypothesis is interesting, it is ultimately a way to ask questions and investigate the nature of reality. It reflects the teachings of spiritual masters who have long pointed out that the world and the self are not as they seem. By asking questions and gaining insight, a person can become aware of the limitless and formless truth that exists beyond all simulations. This truth, which is not influenced by constructs, is the highest form of freedom.